pharmacy school at Ole Miss, and I was approached by some brothers in Beta Row, and they invited me to what we called a smoker back then. Back then, we smoked cigarettes and at the meeting and at the smoker. And while I was there, two of the faculty members, Dr. Lewis Nobles and Dr. Dodge, spoke, and they were brothers. And their passion for the fraternity and their experience in the fraternity and being faculty members, we looked up to them with respect. And that kind of sold me. And then the officers of Beta Row were dressed in suits and everything, very, excuse me, very professional. And I like that. I like that, professional. The attitude and the appearance was that of being very professional. And so what won me over were the messages from the faculty and the brothers. And so I joined Beta Row in 1958, okay? And so it's just their professional attitude and their brotherhood of being close to one another, helping each other, that drove me to want to join Kappa Psi. So like I said, I joined in 1958, so I've been a brother a long time. They probably had around 40 members that I could tell at that time at the smoker. And then after I became a member, then we got a larger, and but we weren't a very large chapter like many of them are today. And back then we didn't have women in the fraternity, so it was limited with just males. So and that, but I was very impressed with the professional appearance and attitude of people. Okay, as I said at the smoker, Dr. Lewis Nobles and Dr. Dodge were two. And then Frank Eby, who was our executive secretary, years later, when they changed the title to executive director, but Frank Eby was influential, and I'll tell you a little later how he influenced me. And I already talked about Dr. Nobles and Dr. Dodge, and then Dr. Garner. Dr. Garner and I were friends from the 60s, and we've had a long relationship, and then we had more involvement when I became executive director, which I'll talk about. And then Norm Campbell became a very close friend, a brother, and also all the nine, I was executive director for 20 and a half years. And I served under 9 Grand Regents. And all of them taught me something in their own way, and each one having a different personality and a different way of leadership and how they conducted themselves. So I learned a little from each one. Being the executive director, I just did a lot of observation, and they were my bosses, but I enjoyed every one of them. They were really wonderful brothers. So I was influenced by them. First of all, I'd like to mention Brother Dewey Garner. And the reason I selected Dr. Garner is because of our relationship through the earlier years, and then he became Grand Regent in '79, and he in 1980 he appointed me the executive director, and he moved the central office from California to Oklahoma City in January of 1980, and Dr. Garner appointed me then the executive director. But before the executive committee approved my position. Norm Campbell called me and interviewed me, and that's the first time I had a nice conversation with Dr. Campbell. And so all of them had influence on me. And when I took over the executive director role in 1980, Kappa didn't have any money, and we had no budget. And so obviously I didn't know what to do because I was new, but Dr. Garner came to Oklahoma City and worked with, I need to say that my wife, Charmaine, was my administrative assistant. And Charmaine and I and Dewey spent several days in 1 week. And of course he had to return several times to reorganize the office. And but he's a financial wizard, and he was able to instruct us and educate us and show us ways to put the fraternity back on a solid footing. And besides being very close friends prior to that, I even increased my my admiration for him from being his executive director and how he handled getting the fraternity back into a healthy financial situation. So, and I saw in the mask that in the convention was held over at Camelback Inn in Arizona, and I saw that the executive director was running for an office. So since I wasn't very well educated on the different offices, I thought that he was giving up the executive directorship. And what I learned later that it wasn't. So when I went out there to the convention, I waited for them to call me in, but they never did. And I learned that that position was still filled, and that it wouldn't need me. Well, and that was in August. So by the time late December came, Dewey wanted to know if our dean would approve moving the office there, which I anticipated because I went out there with a report to show that we had the facility and the dean was on board, and that we would accept the central office, and I serve as the executive director. So I came back home and forgot about it, and then I get a call in late December, and he wanted to know if I would still be interested, and I said yes. So then it was moved in January. A couple challenges. One was I found out the movers, we didn't have any money to pay the movers. Oh. And I got a call from the movers, and they said they were packing up and they were heading, they had to go and pick up another load in California, and they would be back in a couple days. Well, what happened is early the next afternoon, I get a call that they're in Oklahoma City, and I said, how in the world did you make it? And they said, we drove all night, and then they said, we're going to take a nap and come, and we'll be back. We'll come around 5 o'clock and unload. And I said, oh man, I didn't know what to do. So I called my banker in Norman and asked him if I could get a cashier's check for the amount as a loan. And he said, sure. So he gave me a 3-month loan, and I had the money for him when he came. So that was one challenge. Well, I told, my wife is always, well, we're at Ole Miss, she was secretary to the assistant dean of engineering, and she had a lot of administrative experience. So one condition for me accepting the executive directorship was for her to be my administrative assistant. So the executive committee approved that and put her on salary, and so she ran the office, and we had, and I was going to say later, but I can introduce that now. We had another secretary that worked in the office, and Charmaine managed the office, and I couldn't have handled it without her, because she knows how to handle the paperwork, and I don't know what I did, but Dewey and Charmaine did everything. My wife is very easy to work with. She doesn't mind taking orders from me. No, I mean that in a kind way. I mean, we work together, and it's not me telling her what to do. It's just we discuss things as they come up, whether it's a chapter having problems, we discuss it, and then I try to take care of it and that. But no, we work very well together. Later on I was going to talk about it with how you balance your personal life and everything, but we drove 20 and a half years up there back and forth, and she was always with me because we're going up to the university, to the College of Pharmacy, and so since it was in the College of Pharmacy, you know, she would be in the office and I would go upstairs to my academic office and that. Well, most people would say achieving their dreams, their goals is success, but for me, the most part of it, I view success in two parts. The first part being what I just said, achieving your dreams and your goals, and that. The second part is being successful is to make a difference in life. And how do I do that? By caring, by serving and helping others, treating others with respect, no matter their condition. To me, success in life is not just about me, it's about others. So you can feel you made your accomplishments, but you have to be willing to work. And as pharmacists, we help other people. And to me, that's success when people come, the way I look at it, people come into the pharmacy and they're ill. And a lot of them are really afraid. They don't tell you, but they're afraid. But if there's a warm voice and a smiling pharmacist that takes care of them, that's half the healing process for the patient. So to me, I only practiced 2 years after pharmacy school, and then I went back to graduate school and got my PhD in that, in medicinal chemistry. But I found in life that just having your dreams, your goals is rewarding, but you find there's more to life than just that. And I think when reading the Mask, I see a lot of brothers involved in a lot of projects, helping in the community, and that I'm very proud of that, because they are reaching out and doing and helping others. And to me, that's success, you know, and that. So, all right. Advice to achieve success professionally. I think I kind of hit on it a little bit. I was saying that simply we must act professionally, and as pharmacists we learn to serve our patients with pleasure. Many are in fear of their illnesses, with a kind face and voice from a pharmacist, I think, is part of the healing process. So that's what I had mentioned earlier, and personally, for me, success in life is that I have to make a difference. And achieving one's goal is admirable, but that's only half of life's battle. In life, we have to watch out for our greatest enemy, and that's pride. It will defeat you. Arrogance and self-importance eventually brings you down. or at least makes you unhappy, because no matter how much money, prestige, or how materialistic you are, you will never be satisfied, and life takes on no meaning for the prideful person. I like humility and love. For me, that defeats pride. And for the fraternity to be successful on Kappa's side, the brother has to feel, and I put that in quotes, the bond that is in the fraternity. Just being with brothers is a start, but having good times is not enough. The fraternity has to have a mission. What is its purpose, and what does it want to accomplish? The brothers must be in the game and not sitting in the bleachers. The fraternity is like a person. How does this person become successful in life? And just as I described above, this applies to our beloved fraternity. The fraternity has to make a difference in life. Life includes, for me, family, church, and personal relationships. Work had to do with my teaching and research responsibilities. Fraternity involved my role as executive director. So how did I balance all three? I gave you a little background about my wife. Charmaine was my administrative assistant in the central office, along with our other secretary. And also I mentioned that we rode together for 20.5 years, and so we were always together. My academic office was up on the 3rd floor, and Kappa Psi office was down on the lower level. And I balanced my academic affairs upstairs with some afternoons and evenings working in the central office. Sometimes I'd have to go in on Saturday, especially when it came around province meetings or Grand Council convention, working on budgets and what have you. And besides the GCC, we also had our banquets, at the different meetings, and we had to get ready, and also we had exhibits at the meeting. We had to get ready for that, so sometimes that would require a weekend additional work, but I would work some afternoons when I wasn't involved in my academic, and I would always come down about 4 o'clock and work until about 6:30, so we beat the traffic coming home, and that way. And then Charmaine would have everything on my desk that had to be signed, and if there are checks that had to be signed, or if there's any problems, then the little notepad, little post-its would be there, and there'll be phone calls I have to make and things like that. So she would have that all organized for me, and it made my job really a lot easier. And so the Margarians were a very close-knit family, and Sharma and I raised 4 wonderful children, 3 daughters and a son, together and in church. And we never neglected our children, and we're always together until they were on their own. And but we were always in contact and had family functions, especially Thanksgiving and Christmas, and some summer cookouts. And Sundays are our church time, and many times we all had lunch after church and things. So we stayed together as much until they got grown and on their own, and children, and because they were with us a lot, and that. So yeah, and they came here at times, the executive committee, and they would come to Oklahoma City for to the central office for meetings, and then we'd have them down here, and that way they met the family, and they knew the family and things. So we were all. That's why I said the Grand Regions had a lot of influence and impact in my life, and they were very, very wonderful brothers. Yeah. brothers bring their families, and the kids are a little small. They'd be with their mothers out by the side of the pool while the meetings were going on, and then they come to the evening banquets and things. And especially we had ice cream socials. They were there eating up all the ice cream and M&Ms, and yeah, it was wonderful. It's very important they bring the family, because, well, maybe it'll influence the children to go to pharmacy school, but the other thing is to see what mom and dad are involved in, that they're pharmacists, and what Kappa Psi means to them, and it kind of influences them, and well, I haven't discussed much with the younger people. I'm sure they remember that like my kids did, and my kids are, grown, and they are really, we talk about it once in a while when we talk about Kappa Psi. Very well involved with the Grand Regents and their families, like Dewey and his family, his two sons. We're very involved, because he and Barbara, his wife, would bring their two boys, and yeah, we have a great time. And then I think Johnny Porter and them brought their children, and yeah, it's, after a while it becomes like a family, and you feel, you feel the bond, and you're very happy to see each other, even after they retire. Well, they become past Grand Regents and do other things, but and it's always good to see the families that we know and come, and so yeah, Kappa Psi was very, very close and family, kind of family oriented. So, yeah, the GCC is the best because it brings brothers in from all over the country, and sometimes you don't see some of them for a while, well, a couple of years anyway, and they may have in California, and then they're on the East Coast, where it's South Carolina, and so you don't see them too often. And it's nice to be together again, and so yeah, I have a lot of wonderful memories in the 20.5 years I was there. And working with all the 9 Grand Regents, each one has their own method of running the fraternity, and different leadership qualities. My main challenge was working with them to make them effective, because it was my job. I always looked at it as my job was to make them look good, because they relied on me to provide what I had to provide for them, with their needs and things, my greatest challenge was the budget. And because of my experience in 1980, I was very sensitive about anybody trying to overspend. So I kind of watched that to make sure that no one would overspend or go off budget. And they would ask me, Bob, do we have enough money to do this? And each Grand Region has a Grand Region fund that they can use on their own. But when there are other functions, like going at one of our receptions at APHA or the other organizations, we have to make sure we stay in budget. And so I would set all that up with the hotel and the beverage people and the food people and everything. And if the Grand Region wanted something extra, then we'd have to see and say, well, I think we can get it in budget, or it's not in budget, so we can't do it. And so that was my biggest challenge, making sure the money was held properly or done properly, and that we didn't overspend.
Okay.
And then, what's my biggest learning experience? Okay. When I first took over the central office in 1980, I didn't know the role of executive director. There was no manual, only brief duties described in the Constitution and Bylaws 8, and it gives a general description of what I was responsible for. And I learned really on a day-by-day basis from Dr. Garner, and because he had many years of experience in the executive committee and the higher echelon than I did. I mean, I just was down in a lower echelon level, and then I remember receiving a letter from, I call one of our greatest legends was Dr. Evie, who was, I said, the executive secretary. He wrote me a letter about the first month I was executive director, and I think we talked once on the phone, but he must have sensed that I felt my inadequacy, and he wrote me this letter and said that you have to remember that the executive director keeps stability in the central office, and because grand regents come and go, and I realized that after I was with Dr. Garner for 4 years, and then Brother Pat Wells took over as Grand Regent. So you have them coming in and establishing leadership, making sure the fraternity is surviving and doing well with working together. And then you have him on, and he got a new leader coming in. And so you got to have continuity. You got to have stability. And so I learned what Dr. Evie meant, because he was executive secretary for many years, and he in the early years he held the fraternity together, because it was run a little differently than at the time I went in. It's a little more different now too. So that was a big challenge, and that, so I guess that's about it. That was my biggest learning experience, and that. So, well, personally, it has to be my wife and my children and grandchildren, my nephews, my nieces, and brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, people we associate and are very close. But professionally, would be, Dr. Garner, but he's in the fraternity, so I don't want to beat on that too much. But when I will say professionally, as a professor in the College of Pharmacy, is Dr. Allison Welder. She's a close friend, and she was in pharmacology, and she and I became very close and good friends, and she would visit here with our family for Thanksgiving and Christmas and that, and we became very close. But so that was probably my closest friend professionally in my academic career. Fraternally is again Dr. Garner and Dr. Campbell, and really most of the past Grand Regents that I worked under, because those who are still alive I am very close to. Johnny Porter and is one, and they we're always in contact, and they all had, like I said earlier, they had influenced me in many ways, and the brotherhood gets tighter and tighter the more involved you are. And Grand Regent Brian Furbush, I have an executive committee. I have a service order named after me in Article 6 of the Constitution on orders, honorary, and service. It says, there shall be the honorary order known as the Robert E. Margarian Order of the Silver Mortar. Membership will be restricted to persons who have been members of the fraternity for 25 years. That's one. Another great accomplishment for me is just being the executive director for 20.5 years. So there was only one other executive director in that office longer than and I even forget who that Dewey knows, but I forget who that is, but I'm the second the longest. I know Johnny's Porter is getting close to it, so I don't know how long he's been in, but 13 years? Okay. But because I was retiring from the university, and I had retired from the university a couple of years before, and we carried on with the central office, and I saw that the attitude of we had another dean in that, and his attitude towards the office wasn't as strong, because the former dean was Kappa Psi, and they're always hinting around that they needed the space and that. And so I realized it's about time, I guess I better give it up and close it out and go home. And so we did. It was a very sad day, I'll be honest, because when we saw him moving all that furniture out and everything, I was sitting there in that high back chair I had and thinking about all the years that we were there and all the good friends we had, and the maid and that became very nostalgic and that. But it was a wonderful time. My wife loved it so much, and that, so we had such a good time. Yes. So, well, as a faculty member, I received cancer grants from NIH for my work in breast cancer. And I also have 10 patents on my drugs, and I think, you know, I'm kind of proud of that. And now I write novels, so I'm writing my 5th novel. I published 4. The first 2 are medical thrillers, and the second 2 are detective thrillers. And my 5th one is a detective thriller. So I told my faculty that when I retired, I wasn't going to sit around and wait for Mr. Death to come and get me. I was going to work and do what I wanted to do, and drop dead in doing what I wanted to do. So I started getting interested in writing, and went to workshops and read a lot of books and started writing, and had a couple of teachers teach me about how to write novels and stuff, and so I really enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it. So how did I get into it is a very interesting question. A year before I retired, I sent a memo to the dean, because you want to give them a year or two. They have to follow university policy and publish for the position, and then have a committee and select a person to fill mine. So it takes about a year. So when I did that, where I was closing out my lab and I was finishing up with my last PhD student, and we were writing up the grant to send to NIH to finalize everything. And so I don't know if it was the pressure or the mental things that occupied my mind, whether it became less, but when we would drive up to Oklahoma City, I started getting ideas about things. And so I was thinking, what am I, where is this going? And so, after a while, when I got other ideas, I thought maybe I'd try and put them down and see if I can write about them. And so once we closed the central office and we left, I really got into it. But I attended workshops, and I had a couple of teachers, and one was very rough on me, and he said, you write in a scientific mode, and you got to learn how to write in a novel mode. You're too stiff in your writing. And so I had to practice and practice, and it was kind of tough. My first novel, I probably wrote 3 novels in one till I got it right, and it takes a lot of work, but I enjoy it. And so, I mean, if you want to do something, you just keep at it. You know, I mean, I don't expect to be John Grisham or any of the other outstanding ones, but who knows? Somebody might like my work, but I enjoy writing them. So that's all I care about. You'll Never See Me Again is probably my favorite. The fourth one was A Tongue Collector. And the name sounds kind of scary, and it's not as bad as it sounds, but I'm not going to tell you about it. But You'll Never See Me Again is based on a true story of a woman in Atlanta. She was in her 20s, and she had only been married 6 weeks, and she worked for this bank in Atlanta, in the rather well-to-do district, close to a shopping mall. Well, she left one evening and met a friend, a lady friend, and they had a meal. Her husband was a bank examiner, and he was in Athens, 90 miles away. And so they did some shopping, grocery, and she put it in the back of her car, and she went home. Okay. Well, the next day she didn't appear for work. And so her boss got a little worried and tried to call around and find out where she was. You know, maybe she's ill, or maybe he didn't realize she was taking the day off, and because she always was on time. She even beat him to the office and that. Well, long story short, she came up missing. And the husband didn't know where she was. Nobody knew where she was. They only been married 6 weeks. And the interesting thing is, her car appears the next afternoon at noon in the parking lot. But there's nowhere that she could be found, but her car comes and it's parked in the parking lot. Who parked it there? The groceries were still in the back. There was some indication, there was some foul play in the front seat, and so it went from there. So, and the last thing, one of our greatest accomplishments, my wife and Charmaine and I and our children in 1987 started the Norman Christmas Day Community Dinner. Okay, and in 1986, I got this feeling. Now, I can be very spiritual because I believe, you know, I have deep faith, and I felt like the Holy Spirit was telling me that I had to put on this Christmas dinner. Well, I didn't want to hear it because I didn't know how I could do it. Put on a dinner in this town, where do you start? So for a year I didn't do anything. And then one spring well, it must have been 86 or 85, I forget, so, you know, it's 36 years ago. But anyway, the following spring we were walking the neighborhood there, and I got this feeling again that you got to have this dinner. And it had been on my mind, but I've been trying to throw it out. So I told Charmaine, you know, do you think we should move on this? Should we do this dinner? And she said, yeah, our kids, you know, are in their teens and their 20s, and they can help. And so we stopped off at friends of ours around the corner, and that go to our church. and told them about it. And they said, yeah, we'd like to help. Well, I said, we got to find out where we're going to have it, how many are going to come, how much it's going to cost, how much food are we going to have to get. We don't have a kitchen. We have just a little space with a microwave and all that, you know, we can't have it there. And they said, well, we could get those oven roasters and do all this kind of stuff. So I had to ask the minister and get permission from the lay body to do it. And they said, yeah, you can do it here. So we worked it out. It was terrible. I mean, trying to do with the roaster and that. Okay, long story short, we had 24 volunteers and we had 20 people show up. Okay, and then the second year we had 100. The third year we moved it to the high school, and we've been in high school, Norman High School, ever since. Okay, so this past Christmas was our 35th year, and as I said, first year in '87. We had 24 volunteers, we've had 20 people. Now we feed 2,200 people, and we have 200 volunteers. So, and that's on Christmas Day. On Christmas, from 11 to 2 we feed. But we work it for 2 days, 3 days before, up at 4 in the morning, working, getting everything ready, getting all the food ready. And I have a jewel of a cook that manages the kitchen, and I oversee everything, and I have my team captains, and then I have my volunteers that call in. I assign them, and we go there and we work it, and so we always have our family. Ever since we started, we have our family Christmas that evening. Because we close up and put everything in storage, and we're done about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we come home and rest, and we start our family Christmas at 6 o'clock and do all that. So we're very proud of that dinner and that. So our children worked that, and 2 of our girls, we lost our son in 2017 and our daughter in 2020 with brain cancer. So. But those 2 and our 2 daughters that we still have, well, they all work the dinner. They all have special jobs. They work the desserts, they work the drinks, they work we have all different kind of jobs, serving, work in the kitchen, work in the toys. We have Santa. It's a big event, and we have a special needs section. You know, I have to have 2 police officers there to maintain that everything will be okay. And yeah, it's quite an operation, but it grew, and we learned, just like being executive director. We learned as we went, made mistakes, corrected it for the next year, and went on. But I want to emphasize this, is that if anyone has an idea of what they would like to do, you can't let the negative thoughts stop you. If you're really in your heart you want to do something, you can do it. Because I'll tell you, I didn't think I could do this, but I have a lot of helpers. It's not just me, but to be the leader and the ramrodder and push this thing through, you just have to have the faith and the guts to keep going. And if you want something bad enough, you can do it. And I can prove it, because working in a town, I went around and talked to the agent and said, oh, it would never work in Norman, and there's no money for it. So no one would give us any money, and it wouldn't work. Now we have banks, businesses, everybody donating, and it takes over $15,000 to run it, to feed that many people. So, but we make budget. And but back then in '86, I would have said, no, I don't think I can do it. But now I realize, if you want something bad enough, you can do it. When Bill Smith was Grand Regent, Charmaine was crowned the Kappa sweetheart, And then they had a quartet at that time of Kappa Psi Brothers that sang. Well, they sang a song to Charmaine, and Charmaine gets kind of embarrassed, you know, in front of everybody, and they were singing that, and then they gave her a ring for being the Kappa Psi sweetheart, and that was very, very touching and rewarding for us. And then we went over the rapids with the Palmieri family when they were at a GCC, he was Grand Regent, and in a rubber boat. And then another favorite memory was working the Kappa Psi booth. Charmaine used to help me in the booth at times, and she got to know a lot of brothers, and they would come not to talk to me, they'd come to talk to Charmaine. And Charmaine would get them to sign the book and hand them the literature and talk to them and ask them, because she was very good at establishing the roles to make sure the graduate brothers we had their name in the database, you know. At that time it was a elementary database, not like they have now, so she would make sure that the graduate brother, we had their address and everything, and get it in the book, and she'd mark it. So when we got back to the central office, she would take that book and with the other secretary make sure they got on the rolls. And then we would send them a letter or send them the mask and that, and we used to also send them a voluntary gift card and things like that. But they would always come back, and I thought, hey, I don't even need to run this booth. I just leave Charmaine here and I'll go. And but she really enjoyed the brotherhood, and she's not Kappa Psi, but she feels like she is, knowing so many. And I remember Ed Cole out in he's in not Seattle, he's in Portland, I think. We still correspond, he and I, and he asked how is Charmaine, because he used to like Charmaine. He'd come and talk to her in the booth and things, and so yeah, she has friends from working at booth and things, and so that was yeah, so that I was able to grow in leadership qualities through my years as the executive director, learning from the Grand Regents, and just being forced into situations where I had to take charge, and so that helped develop me into my leadership role as the director. But yeah, it's and when we had our receptions, you know, getting up and welcoming the brothers to our reception, and then introducing the Grand Regent, who introduced the speaker, the recipient of an award. We gave an award to Brother Bliss Award. Yeah. We would give that, and I'd be able to talk to the brothers a little bit. So you're forced in this, well, not forced, but you want to be in situations where you want to make sure everything's. I would also make sure, you know, all the food is out. I'd be there the day before and talk to the cooks, and talk to the food and beverage people, and then when they set everything out, I'd go there an hour before or two before we start and make sure the room was set up properly, and that everything was put out, and the bar was set over to a certain place, because I learned through the years the bar had to be in a certain place, otherwise the crowd stops the people from coming in, and you got to move it away from the entrance and things. So you go and make sure everything's ready, then I can go and breathe a little bit and then get ready to go. One thing that, since I'm on camera, to get it in the books, Bill Smith, when he was Grand Regent, he started us wearing tux to the social events. he's the one that got us started doing that. And I remember at one hotel, I think it was in Texas, I'm not sure, but the, not the maitre d', I don't know, the I guess food and beverage person or whoever was in charge of the whole deal, watching their waiters and that they were functioning properly. She told me, so, wow, this is such a nice looking group in tux and everything. I said, yeah, we're a professional fraternity. We're Kappa Psi. And so, oh, you're a fraternity? A pharmacy fraternity, not a social fraternity. We're professionals. Oh, no wonder you're all dressed up looking so nice. I think she's looking at all the men. No, but anyway, she was really nice, and so it did. It's the appearance. Appearance. Who do we stand for? We're Kappa Psi, you know, and we're just, and that's part of it, showing our pride, and I'm dressing up for it. That's who we are, and so forth. So I remember that woman's comment, and I told Bill Smith, and he said, "Well, that's why I'm doing it." And I said, "It's okay." I'd just like to say that I'm very happy to see. I'm very happy to see all the young ladies in the fraternity, and there's one thing I noticed about women is many of them have very good leadership qualities, and they have a good heart, and I think sometimes I don't want to talk out of shop or out of order, but I think that they have a way of some insight in, and I don't know if that's maternal instinct or what, but it's something they have that makes them see, and they always just seem to be more loving and more involved and more connected, and it all seems very sincere. It's not fake, and when I read the Mask and I see all of the chapters with a lot of women, young lady leadership, and that, it's good, it's great, and it makes me feel good, because it was something that was needed. And now this is just my opinion, and I'll probably be criticized, but I don't care. But I think that women saved Kappa Psi, because we were sort of at a certain level. We were growing, but very slowly. But the women came in and took charge too, and helped it grow, and it was great. It was great. I'm going to read this a little bit. To be remembered, this involves how I see my self-worth, but I really want to see me in the eyes of others. What I'm hoping they see is a person full of humility, one who lives by faith, walking the narrow road that leads to life, looking for guidance from my Lord and Savior. My life's goal has always been to make a difference in whatever way it is open to me. That's why my family and I started our life's project, the Norman Christmas Day Community Dinner. So that's the way I want to be remembered.